Take it away, Scott.
I was actually shocked to learn that you guys did work together on Hidden Figures, but we are with Mahershala
Mm-hmm.
Ali. And uh, did you guys actually meet during the shooting of that?
I met Pharrell after. I met, and I'll never forget it. We met at the Golden Globes, and we sat down. It was myself, my wife. Pharrell was there with our mutual friend and partner, Mimi Valdez, the legendary Mimi Valdez, and we had a good night. The night didn't go as I necessarily hoped it would, but it was still a good night. So that was the first time we met, probably about 5 years ago.
Meaning, he's often, nominated, and he usually just takes everything home.
Yeah.
And this is like one of the rare instances that he didn't.
It was cool the way he put it.
So it was a light night for him.
Light night.
But it was heavy. But it was heavy for me because it's been very interesting to see you play so many characters.
Yeah.
People don't realize, like, from Moonlight to Hidden Figures to this new movie, Swan Song. Yeah. But like, let's go all the way back to like Benjamin Buttons. Like,
wow,
crazy.
Like what? Like,
Garage.
Yo, this guy's
he been killing
scary.
And you murder every role.
Yes, man.
Thank you.
Like,
really,
really good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's one of the questions I had. Is a lot of actors in the beginning of their career don't really have opportunity to choose the things they want to work on, and it seems like you've been a part of really good projects all along. How did that work out for you? Because a lot of people have to take jobs, just to stay afloat, as working as a working actor. Do you think that's just luck, or it was you held out, or you had other things going on, or?
It's a little bit of both. From the time I kind of got into the industry, there were things I would say no to, and kind of take that chance, sort of allow myself to stay uncomfortable, because I was always really mindful of how your choices, the choices you make now, will impact how you're seen later, and how much of a real thing that is in terms of like trajectory with I'll speak on acting. So back then when I first got in the industry, which was 2000, there was no jumping from TV to film. It's like you got on a TV show, you were a TV actor. You were gonna be on TV forever. And I always, and there's nothing wrong with TV. TV's great, but TV has definitely evolved. Like there were like real deal network shows, and you would just be on that show for 6-7 years. And the best thing that ever happened to me was I booked a pilot right out of grad school, 9 months out of grad school. And I was on it that was a 23 episode show. And I got fired after 19 episodes. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me because that show ran for 7 years and I would have been stuck on that joint. And getting fired from that show was, first I had taken it because I needed the money. I was in debt coming out of grad school and I needed to pay my grandparents back for helping me stay alive. But like, they were giving me money out of their retirement and I needed to hit them back. And so I took that gig. I ended up getting fired. It felt very political in that time. And so just moving throughout a career, I've always wanted to be a lead. I always felt like that was my natural position. But in trying to scale that wall to get to that place, I was always trying to say no to the things that felt like a repeat of what I'd already did. And I was trying to say yes to the opportunities that I felt like would shine me in a light that would allow me to get my next opportunity. And so it's taken me 21 years to finally get that lead. And, here it is.
Now I understand why. What I noticed about your work, it was, of course you picked all the parts, right? But it was more than you picked all the parts. This was by design. This is how you wanted it to go. Give or take the ones that you may not, the light moments that you didn't get, where you didn't get what you wanted. That happens every once in a while to you. Right. meaning like the Golden Globes or like the part you really wanted but you didn't get. But other than that, usually you just like win, win, win. But I'm looking at that and I'm like, you may want to put together a small team of agents to essentially like offer that kind of service to young actors that you like.
Yeah.
Because you're one of the only people that I look at. Like I look at Washington. What's his name?
Oh,
John
David or Denzel?
yeah,
John David.
Denzel?
Yeah.
John David is, his son.
Yeah.
son.
Listen, you and him,
That's my
you
dude.
guys, and it's not because you're brothers. It's not because you're
Yeah.
African Americans. It's just, you just happen to be those kind of guys that have like this amazing taste. And it's like you're curating. It's like the world is just opening up for you and you're just like handpicking. You know, you're not going after the low-hanging fruit, like you said. You're going after the one that's a bit harder to reach, but you know shines a bit different. The light hits it different.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know, it's just a suggestion, you know, at some point, you know, because you're never going to stop. The only reason why I say an agency is because you're never going to stop. Other than that, I'd be like, man, you could be an amazing agent, but you're not going to stop doing what you're doing. And please don't, because we need things to watch. But man, 2 or 3 people who think like you, like young and you kind of like groom them to find those kind of actors that think that way and directors that think that way, man, you could crush it.
I'm humbled by the fact that there's a few young actors who are doing pretty well, who have reached out to me and asked me my thoughts on like, yo, if I take this job, and I think my advice really comes from a place of, first of all, I want the best for them, but I really think you got to know yourself in a real way. You got to know what you could live with, and like there's a lot of tough choices to be made along the way because, you know, life is real, the bills are real, and those responsibilities are very real. And there's times in which I found myself having to go ahead and audition for something that I knew I really didn't want, but at a certain point, you know, you can't be leaning to the family going like, hey, can you help pay my mortgage? You know what I'm saying? So it's about you know, a lot of prayer and also really locking into what your taste is and trying to really nurture that, and I've tried to do that, and thus far it's worked out. It hasn't happened in a time in which I think my youth really wanted it to happen, you know, but I was just thinking about this the other day, that, you know, often things really happen for you and unfold in the time in which you're really prepared for them. And so the whole way I've been really just trying to build and be smart and push myself to be patient, persistent, and prayerful. And I think with those 3 things, all things are possible, you know. And I think we have plenty of examples now of people who have just kind of like stuck to their guns and just kept chopping wood, and it eventually it falls, you know. And so the tipping point, like Malcolm Gladwell, all that, like, you know, I've been very much in that zone, and I try to, in my conversation with younger actors or whatever, I really try to preach that, you know. And the industry's changed too. There's so much more opportunity now, for speaking from sort of my tribe, for young Black folks. When I got into the business, it was like you could name like 5 that were working. Anthony Mackie, Will Smith, you know what I'm saying? Then Idris popped in, Denzel was already working, and like, you know, and then the parts just sort of get passed from one to another. So just to be able to like break up in there, it's been challenging. And so for me, I put a lot of pressure on myself from the audition standpoint of going, like, I didn't feel like I ever really auditioned a lot, but if I auditioned, that joint was going to be the absolute best work I could possibly do. Because I came into this industry and I was going by my first full name, which is Mahershala Ali. So that's 18 letters. So let's say if you go, you look at if you watch Benjamin Button at the end, it'll roll down. You'll see Mahershala Ali. So that you walk into a room, you got a lot that you battling. You know, you stand in the room and they want to talk about your name for the first 3 minutes. So you better like show up with a good audition, you know. So all
Yeah.
that, man. But it's been a wonderful journey, and honestly, I wouldn't change any of it because it's been such an extraordinary education, and I've been able to mature because I question, honestly, when just knowing my personality, I'm very much a lone wolf. I'm a little reclusive in my own way. And when I see, especially where the industry is at, social media, the time that we live in, I question if I had this degree of resonance with an audience 10 years ago, I'm not confident I would have necessarily been able to handle that, because it comes with a lot. It comes with you really having the real consciousness about saying no to things and people and opportunities that may lead you down the wrong road. So it's taken me this long to sort of develop the wisdom to be able to sort of traverse this because it's sticky out there.
Quick question. Like, well, first of all, you crushed. I didn't mention Roxanne because that was another
Oh,
role that you like. You
thank you.
like crushed that, bro.
Thank
And
you.
that Mimi
Thank
Strikes
you.
Again, Swan
Thank
Song.
you. Yeah. Yeah.
Roxanne, Hidden
She's everywhere.
Figures. Like, yeah, she got busy.
Yeah.
And still gets busy. Um, but do you ever like? Because I know, like, as artists, we we are sometimes just like inspired. Sometimes we don't know, why or where, and then other times we know where and how we're being inspired. Then there are other times where we just purely just channel. And I think in acting, that's called method acting. When you're like performing your craft, is there ever time when like when you're done rapping a film, um, but some aspects of a personality stays inside you for a while? Like, has there ever been a part that's gotten stuck? Because some people that sort of happens.
Yeah, I heard
Like
That's a
some
that.
people have been driven crazy and like committed suicide because they couldn't get back to them.
that's a great
Um,
question. That's a great question.
you ever
That's a
been
great
stuck one?
question.
And if not, or if so, what is your purging method?
Mm.
That's a great question, bro. The reason being because I think about that and I talk about it, but I don't talk about it from the standpoint of it being triggered. I haven't really been questioned about it. It's great. I have to, man. I had a week off between shooting Green Book and True Detective. I shot Green Book first, and I wrapped that, and then I was on to Fayetteville and shooting three different age ranges. I played a man who spanned 30, 40 years, and so to be shooting 35 one day or 33 one day, then 43 another day, then like 80 and all that. But what I found is that when I finish shooting these parts, when I finish working, I really have to mourn the character, like in order to get him out. Like I just need time for him to move out of me because you got to think you're working a minimum of 12 hours, especially if you're
Mm-hmm.
have a large supporting role or if you're a lead, like I was in True Detective. You're working, those were 80-hour weeks, like regularly. 70 was the short weeks, 80 hours. So you're living with another person's issues, problems, circumstances
Wow.
more than your own, right? So you are, and if you do any kind of studies like emotion about, sort of emotional life or psychology, you tell yourself you're about to get hit by a car and you can get yourself hyped up and you start crying or whatever the thing is that the scene requires. Your body doesn't really know the difference. So it is a magic trick, right? You're kind of, there's these little buttons you can press to get yourself to react a certain way to all these circumstances. And so I think it's akin to football or boxing. Like you don't get to just go play those sports and then you're 50 years old and you like, yeah, I feel good. You don't healthy, like your body feels it. And so in order to recalibrate and rebalance myself, it's a real struggle, not finding who I am, but it's a real struggle to compartmentalize those emotions and know what's triggering me and what is just the residual of just the tension of the week and the other character. And so it takes me time to get rid of these. So to to mourn them, and therefore I could be an appreciation of the work and the growth, and I could be reflective about what I got from the character, because I think every job that you get, there's something for you to gain, but there's obviously something for you to give. And so I want to be conscious of what I give that character, and also want to be conscious of what he has to offer me. And so what I started doing with Moonlight was the first one I really did this with. I started praying for the character. And because I was like, yo, this is my job to imbue this gentleman with spirit, because we're all spiritual beings first. And so for me to do that, I need to pray for him. I need to pray for what he needs to say, for what I need to get from him to be able to channel and share and give to the world whatever I could give from the energy and wave of this character. And I need to make sure that I'm humble and in the right place in order to call on those energies, because it's a mystery to me, honestly, when it's like a scene requires you to have a big emotional reaction. You got to be crying and doing all this other kind of stuff. Like, I still don't know how that happens, but I know I pray on it every day before I go to work. And then when I do that, more times than not, I'm walking away. I'm like, alhamdulillah, thank you. And it's like the work was passed through. I got to be a vessel. I got to be a cup for that water. Got to pass it off. And now someone else gets to drink from it, But to go back and to wrap up to your original question, as far as the exact amount of time, that's different for everything. But I think if you have the proper time to sort of just breathe, settle, relax yourself, I think the stuff that you don't need will leave, and the stuff that you do need, the education that you need from that character, whatever that job brought to you, I think it'll stay. And so I stayed 2 months in Canada after we finished Swan Song, just for that purpose, just so I could kind of like block things out a bit and get myself to a healthier place mentally and emotionally, because it will bring you to the brink.
Well, so that's, first of all, prayer does change things.
Yeah.
And this is probably one of the greatest examples to people, because there are people that don't necessarily believe or don't subscribe to,
Yeah.
spirituality in any kind of way. But that was a very good example for people. So if people, anyone's listening, like, listen, you might have a hard time believing in God, but you can't deny the universe. And what you're now saying is a process that is relatable to anyone, whether they're spiritually oriented or not. And what I like about it is when you're praying for that character, you are reminding yourself in real time that you are you,
Separation.
and that character is that character. Yeah.
Yes.
It's a really cool exercise.
Yes.
And the thing is, you know what, for like our listeners, like when you're going through some, and when you have like sort of acted outside of the lines of what you would usually do, like
Right.
just took it a little far, and you're like, damn, I really went overboard tonight. I had too much to drink, and I said I shouldn't have said, or you know what I'm saying? I went and scored on Shorty. Like I really shouldn't have done that. Like or whatever the scenario is, you can actually, look at that person that you felt like wasn't you, and pray for that person.
Right.
You could pray for, where I come from, like they would call it a spirit, he got a demon in him, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, but you could pray for that and get that out of you. I like to help people. I like people to like walk away with something. And I think your scenario, I mean, you guys heard that from Mahershala Ali. Like, this guy is like, he don't leave many awards behind.
So I got a question though. So for like, I'm sitting here listening and tripping too. Like it's crazy that you even got that whole process. But I want to know, like, when did you know that you needed, like, it was something that I needed to do, to detach from this character, and then how did you get to this? Like, where you at now? You sound like you got it down pack. I know I got to do this. I pray I'm on. Take a couple days. Was it ever a time when you got to a point right after a movement and you felt like, yo, something wrong? I gotta figure a system out or a way to do this. Basically asking, how did you get to this point where you got it down pat?
Yeah, how'd you
You
make
know
that
what? I wouldn't
determination?
say I
Yeah.
have it. I wouldn't say I have it down pat. It's all an education and
Mhm.
your prayer. I've always done. I've never walked on I don't. If I have, it was purely an accident. But I've never walked on a set and the director called cut, and I didn't like take 30 seconds in my trailer to just say, "Help! I need help." You know, never. So that's a given. But in terms of like praying for the character, that was like tricky territory because I was just like I wasn't sure if it was cool to do. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you know what I mean? Just like once you start digging into like, yo, is this cool? Is it okay for me to be praying for this character who ain't, you know?
Yeah.
And it's funny just how Moonlight went. I felt like I got my confirmation that was it's cool to do. Like, you can go ahead and do that,
Okay.
you know.
Okay.
But you had all been you had always done this?
I've always done that. I've always done that.
Right.
Going back to grad school, like 97, you know, I've always, because my anxiety is so real, like with this stuff too, you know, I feel an extraordinary amount of pressure. And my only way to manage it and not let stage fright overwhelm me or whatever, and to face it and to be courageous is to go, oh, you know what? This is bigger than me. So let me call on what's bigger than me. And when I call on what's bigger than me, then it's like, I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but I'm just handing that pressure to Allah. You know, like there you go. Like I help a brother out, you know, and that's how I approach it. And then when the help shows up, I get to be in gratitude for the help showing up. So that's kind of like the cycle for me. You know, it's funny you mentioned like a time it really got to me. You know, it was the most difficult role I've had to shoot was Cross and Roxanne. I had
Yep.
nightmares. Like I had
Really?
Yes, man. Bro, because it was
Nightmares.
believable. Yeah, it was very believable.
I
It
didn't
was
sleep that
believable.
last week. I didn't sleep the last week of filming like more than a couple hours a night because I just was like dreaming and sweating out the bed and like just what I had to do, man. It just was so deeply uncomfortable. I'm grateful for the experience though. I'm grateful to learn that my body processes it like that. Like in a deep way. Like I could break out, like stuff will happen just to get the work off, you know? And so I began to realize at least my relationship with it. Once I go in, I'm not necessarily great at the separation. Once they call action, once you in your day, once you're in the shoot, it's like you're in the ring and you gotta bring it 100% of the time. And to me, it honestly, acting has always felt like life and death to me, life or death. And that if you fail to tell the truth, that just feels shameful. Like when I mean by that is that if you go in that day and your work, if the director's like, all right, that's solid, we're moving on. Oh, that's the worst thing you could ever tell me is something is solid. Like it's the worst. It's the worst. It's like we gotta get to that place where the energy wakes up in the room and everyone goes, that's it. Moving on. We got it. Then I could rest. And then I'll get myself prepped for the next scene, the next moment, the next take or whatever. But that has to be the standard. I just feel that's what it is. It just has to be the standard. And if that's not the standard, then I don't know what you're doing. Like that's for me. So that's how I try to approach it.
Meanwhile, he like crushed House of Cards.
Everything.
Thank
man.
you.
That was where
Crazy, bro.
that was my introduction, I think, to you, not realizing that you were in the other parts. That
Yeah.
I was like, who's this guy?
That was a big job for me, man. That was a big job for me for multiple reasons. I remember it was it was a crazy time getting that. But at that time, getting House of Cards was wild because we got short memories. But if you think 2012, when we started shooting that'd be like somebody approaching an actor and being like, listen, Blockbuster Video is starting to put out TV shows. And Blockbuster's about to do a show called House of Cards. Like, just to get a call and it's like, Netflix is about to do this show. I was like, Netflix, like the mail to order, like DV, like the video company, like, it was weird, but I was coming out of some difficult times, man, and I was like renting a room from somebody in LA. Haven't been worked, but we went through a tough patch, like with the financial crisis and all this stuff, and the industry shut down for a while, and there were strikes happening, and like people losing homes and whatnot, and I just got out of.
It's so
Yeah.
interesting how struggle, and I call it guided struggle, right?
Yeah,
Because God's a part of everything.
yeah,
But guided struggle helps us to focus in on what our real true kill shots are.
yeah, yeah.
You chose very wisely.
Thank you,
Like,
brother.
having to rent that room made
Yeah.
you pick the right part. know?
Shit did.
Isn't it interesting?
Yes.
It's like,
Yes.
I find that, like, in my most strenuous exercise, or the most strenuous part of my exercise, or strenuous part of my job, or the toughest of situations, all of a sudden things slow down and we think so much clearer, and it's amazing how that works if you can take the time to appreciate it versus just being like, fuck,
Yeah.
or panic, or just like, even when you look back on it retrospectively, you're just like, man, I was really going through it then. It's like, well, no, that's the way the universe conditioned that moment so that
Right.
I could be very
Right.
clear
About
and
what
my
you
next
need to
steps
do
needed to
and
be.
not what you want to do. About what you
That's right.
need to do.
Yeah.
That's
You're
right.
100% right. 100%.
It's interesting. Like I was listening to some of your interviews, and it seems like you see acting through the lens of music. Because I caught on to something that you said, which was, I think it was on House of Cards, where you were like, if the relationship between the two actors didn't feel right, it was a false note. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting that he's like seeing that as a musical relationship almost. And do you think that's from you making beats?
I do. I think of it in terms of music and rhythm. Like, rhythmically, this scene is off. Like, boom, boom, boom. Let's pick up the pace. Let's pick up the cues. And then boom, the scene like opens up, and you can feel the music and the writing. You can feel the rhythm. It talks. It tells you what to do. Like, it really does. If you just in it and sit in it, you're like, that feels right. And once you lock on what feels right, it hears right, it resonates right, then you got it, But my relationship with music has always deeply, deeply, deeply informed my work, making the playlists for characters going back to college again, like making little mixtapes. I was going to NYU, be on the subway or whatever, and trying to find things that felt appropriate for the character, only. So I started working on things from the standpoint of, like, if I was playing a character in the 30s, I was finding Smithsonian slave shout songs to blues stuff to Robert Johnson to whatever, and I would compile some sort of playlist so that as soon as I was close to about to start working on that character, a few hours out, or even during that period of time, I would only listen to that, working on Hidden Figures, put together my little mixtape, and I only listen to stuff that is appropriate for that time, or for that character, or for that vibe or sense. And so that is one of the things that I've always used. I always use music to get in character and just to sort of like inform the energy of my work, in a real way.
Who are some of your favorite artists that you grew up on that?
Oh my God. Well, I'm in Oakland right now, so we gotta start with Souls of Mischief and Hieroglyphics.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
you know,
You're treading on Pharrell
yeah.
territory now.
Oh man, like, but oh my God,
Those are
just
mischief.
too.
Wow.
Oh man, come on.
Infinity.
Souls and Casual, Saphir, Hobo Junction. To like, so my dad was a New Yorker. Well, he lived in New York ever since I was 3, and so I would go out there every summer. And so my thing was, it was compared to my friends and stuff locally. I remember buying like DJ Clue tapes and Fat Joe stuff and Big L, everything like out in New York and coming home as well. And so I was like really, really influenced by East Coast music. But my first records were like, I remember very first record I bought was Jermaine Jackson, Let's Get Serious. I was like 4 and a half and I lived behind a record store and I went over there and I bought the single. But
At 4
Bad
years old?
Boys. Say that again. I was 4 and a half. I was like 4 and a half years old, and I lived behind this record store. And I walked over there with my money, and I got me that single, and it had a skip in it. It had a little skip, and I went and played that joint, and it skipped. And then I went back. I took that joint back. They gave me a record that had a skip in the same spot. So I think it was a bad pressing. but
Wow.
Jermaine,
At 4 and a half.
yeah, I was like 4 and a half, 5. I couldn't have been more than 5. But
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I literally lived right behind this little record store. But Houdini, Fat Boys growing up, those were my first records, Run DMC, UTFO. Then it like, I remember what blew me away. My mind was blown one day. I was in junior high. And again, it's harder to get stuff in California, at that time, because, everything was so regional. But my dude hit me off with this little mixtape. And I remember it had like Just Ice and KRS-One and
Whoa.
Public Enemy, like all the, it had Dana Dane on it. It had some Slick Rick. And so it was like, it was over. It was over. And after that moment, I've always been like digging really deeply into music, like on a very, very real level. Like Raekwon and Ghost made you wanna write. I remember when I bought Cuban Links, I took that joint, I was listening to it. I went over to my cousin's house. He chopped something up on it and I started writing and we recorded that. We were recording over that until his computer blew up. He had an early Omega computer in the mid 90s and his computer ended up blowing up because we were up there trying to do it so bad because it just inspired just so much, And so I love a wide range of music, but when it comes down to it, people have no idea how much, unless you really lived it. Like a lot of people have no idea how much hip hop has just informed who we are and our experiences and just how we identify in the world and has kept brothers sane through all of it. So yeah, the influences are heavy and deep and rich. And I literally could name 500 people off the top of my head that that have impacted me in a real way. But most importantly, starting out, it would be hieroglyphics, starting with Souls of Mischief and Dale the Funky Homo Sapien and Casual and all those brothers, Pep Love and all of them. That's the home team.
This episode just gotta have all Bay music.
Yeah.
With some like, some purple tape in there. For sure.
Yeah.
With some purple tape in there.
What
And I
about
gotta say,
T-Shirt and
just
E40?
all
Did you ever
you
get
talk
into that?
about, I don't think people get a chance to really like dive into that. At least from the East Coast appreciation perspective. Like us appreciating the Bay, like all the records that really came and like just fresh, like so we gotta do that. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, for sure. And when did you get into like Too Short or E40? Did they ever?
It's funny. Too Short was always around. Too Short been rapping 40 years, man.
I know. That's
Like Too Short
nobody don't
has been
understand
around
that.
forever.
He
And
even
you
had a
gotta-
song called Too Short, and that was banging then in the 80s. In the 80s.
Yo, cuss words, like all these joints.
Come on.
Like, so I need a freak. I remember being at Too Short was a thing I was never permitted to listen to because I was so young. So you would catch it at somebody else's spot, or I'd be at my cousin's in Oakland or whatever, and they'd be bumping Too Short, and there'd be a sideshow going on or whatever happening. And it's funny, just with my just with my practice, you know, and I do my best. I fall short of being a good Muslim often, but it's funny. My relationship with Too Short is still the same. I always feel like he's a brother I can't listen to, even though I do. But just as growing up, that's what it was. But Too Short, E40.
Yes, sir.
Oh, and
41.
honestly,
Sprinkle me, man.
I remember when Master P was here in Richmond. Like when I remember seeing his tape in Leopold's, you know, Ice Cream Man or whatever, like before he went back out to New Orleans. So the Bay, and this is what I want to say. The Bay is so slept on because people don't, not saying somebody got to run around giving the Bay credit, but the Bay is one of the most diverse places in the world in terms of sound. Think about in the 90s when you would have everything from Too Short, E40, you had the whole Hieroglyphics crew, then you had the Loonies, you had Pop, you had Digital Underground, you had the Coup, then you had like more underground, like Living Legends, that like Merce and all these brothers. Like you had KRS-One came here, and I caught the KRS tennis ball twice. KRS-One came to town. He was on stage and he was like, yo, this is the mecca of indie labels, you know, out here. And it really spoke to, and this is the early 90s, and was when brothers like just started going, all right, ain't nobody supporting us. We'll put it out ourselves. And so we were like ahead of that in a real way of like being independent artists, because the sheer range of folks, you know, Sway and Tech coming out of here and the Wake Up Show, like, you know, it's a special place, man.
It really is.
And it really cultivated just my love for other things as I got further into music, you know, outside of rap. You know, come on, Raphael Sadiq alone, period. Tony.
Yeah.
Like, period. Like, Raphael is still, I'm bumping right now playing Jimmy Lee. And, you know, that's been out for a second, his latest project, but the way we see it, like he's got a few, man, where the music in the Bay and the artists that come out have always been a huge inspiration in terms of like really thinking in a liberated way about you know what you could do, what your approach could be. Look at the Cool Boots Riley, like just the sound and range is incredible.
And his film work, like he's another level.
Yo, dude is a genius.
Yes.
Boots is a genius, man. He's a genius.
He is.
Yeah. But and just for the record, I'm listening to, there's new stuff I'm bumping too, you know, as well. I always kind of jump between, you know, but I'm loving like what Mock Hami is doing and the Griselda brothers who I've been on for a while, and Rock Marciano and Kai and
Kai,
you know, Navy Blue. There's brothers like, you know, the whole Alchemist sort of tree of folks, and Muggs is still like killing it because I love producers, and Dilla, a huge fan of Dilla, and you know, it gives me life, man.
Is that how the Dilla album ended up in Swan Song?
You know what? I wish I could take credit for that. I wish I could, but the greatness of Dilla is well beyond me. Our director, Ben Cleary, who was Irish and lives in Ireland, we were like vibing out on stuff, and especially early on in the process, you start sending each other music and ideas and stuff, and like, you know, I'm sending them Zamrock, like Ghazi Family and all this stuff, and you know, we start vibing out just on hip hop, and he's just like, I love Dilla. I was like, you love Dilla? Like what? And then there was a moment where we was looking out how to build in stuff for the story, because the story takes place about 20 years in the future, and something Mimi said. Mimi goes like, yo, we got to make sure hip hop has a place in the future. Like, you know, what are we saying if we don't have some sort of sense and essence about hip hop and where it is 20
Mimi,
years from now? Say that again.
That's signature Mimi, by the way.
It's signature Mimi, you know. and
hip-hop?
So between Ben Cleary absolutely loving Dilla and Mimi's mention of like making sure we have like some sort of sense that hip hop lives on. That's how that Dilla record made it in there, for sure. And if we could have got the sample cleared, you would have heard a little something playing as well. But there was something we couldn't get cleared. But yeah, man, that made me so happy. And I know I heard Ma Dukes knows, so that it's in the film. So I can't wait for her to see it, because his mother found out it was in it, and that makes me happy because that's a
Yeah.
fellow Aquarius who I just love deeply, man. He's when I started buying instrumental records because of Dilla. You know, I'd be looking out for like just people dropping beat tapes just because of Dilla, you know, and so to get to some way, shape, or form share space with him is an incredible thing.
Hey, but yo, I want to get into the Swan Song joint. The
Yeah.
just the concept of the cloning joint, right?
Yeah.
Before I saw it, I was like, I wasn't really with the cloning. I was with it, but it was spooky to me. It's scary. But watching this joint, it's still scary and spooky, but it's just like it took me to a different place, man. So the way that they, not to give it up or whatever. I don't know when it's coming out, but the way that they kind of like positioned it and had it so the person was okay with getting cloned.
Yeah.
Like,
It was a very human decision at the end of the day. It
yeah.
wasn't, and that's what I love about the film. That feels very different from your other clone stories. Is that those films usually take a route where it's clearly like, all right, this ain't gonna go well if this clone
Yeah.
takes over your life or the clone is evil or whatever, right? And what is great about this, and what our director was able to do, writer director Ben Cleary, is he really made it and kept it a human story. Like, this is about looking out for your family. This is about dealing with your mortality. This is about making sure your family, especially your child, has a father, moving on. And so the question is this a process? Is this something he can trust? Is this even okay to be doing? And one of the things that pops up in the film throughout, and one of the most difficult things about the decision, is that he can't incorporate his wife in it. He can't tell her. Like, the opportunity goes away if he says, hey, are you cool with me just like allowing this clone, who is me, an exact replica, don't even think of him as a clone, just think of him as a twin. Are you cool with this twin taking over for me? He can't include her into that decision. So then that also leads you to, and thinking about life and death and the natural order of things, and how this sort of relates to COVID. Like, so many people, and I want to say this like very consciously and respectfully, because I don't want to pretend like COVID is entertainment, because it's not. But just thinking about how many people have died in hospitals, not being able to FaceTime or hug their families. So then you think about death and the fact that there isn't any closure, and so if you take this character, for instance, part of life and death and just the cycle of life, ideally, is to sit down with your 93-year-old grandfather and say, hey, I love you and I appreciate everything you did for me and the family, and just know that you're appreciated, and we respect and appreciate your sacrifices, and vice versa. And he could say, I love you and I appreciate you. Once you take that from people, especially that young, that's a lot to wrestle with, him knowing that he's about to die and can't have that conversation with his child or his wife. And so he removes that part of closure and that part of the ending of life from the scenario. And so it makes all that leads to the decision being very complicated, but it's a rich story, man. I hope people respond. I hope it resonates with folks.
Yeah, one of the things I felt while I was watching it through your eyes is, you know, how do we deal with feeling like we could be replaced by the people who we think need us the most and who we need the most? And the struggle of that was like a very interesting thing to deal with. Like, wow, could I just be replaced by anything? As important as I feel to this unit, I can just be replaced. And that's like dealing with your mortality.
That is part of it. Absolutely. That you question anytime you feel or you appear to be replaceable or someone else could just plug you in, then I'm sure that would push you to question like, well, what is my value? But yeah, I think all that there's so many things to feel, so many emotions that I think would come up when I just like allow myself just to sit into the reality of the character, But the thing that I think popped up for me most, and when you start like tracking the breadcrumbs that lead to how a character makes certain choices, I think for me when I'm like working and building out the character, the thing that I feel like really pushed me over the top to say yes, regardless of how it's written, you still gotta like track it out as if it isn't, was just thinking about leaving this 10-year-old boy without a father, thinking about my friend circle and, the stereotype um, of and the era that we come out of, like coming out the 80s and how many of us were really, really impacted by our communities and what was going on in it, specifically drugs and whatnot, and how many people don't have fathers, right? And then that becoming this larger stereotype of like black men are not present. And I gotta say, man, my friend circle, maybe it's just coincidence, but those brothers are present fathers, man. They love being dads, and it would break their heart imagining not being able to be there for their kids. And so when I think about this story in particular, and once they cast me and plugged me in, and now this character is black, when I start looking at what are the decisions, what are the elements and attributes that it play in to the psychology of this character to make certain decisions, one of them that I kept thinking about deeply was just this idea of not one, but potentially two kids growing up without a father. And just the pressure that was on her after having lost her mother and her twin. And I was like, it felt like that's not something that can happen. So if it was about cloning yourself at a certain point, then for this story, it was like, well, that's what it's gonna have to be, cause my kid is gonna have a father. I'm gonna be present in his life in some capacity. So yeah.
I have to say, one of my favorite parts of the movie is that the dog knew.
No. Dog was like, "What's up? What's this?"
And what's interesting, what made me think about the dog knowing is also that dog spelled backwards is God, so God knows.
Oh wow. Yeah.
See, that's totally a Scott.
That's Scott, man.
Yes.
He's different, man.
Yes.
Clone the dog, man. Get the other one
Yes,
out.
brother. Yes. Yeah, man.
That's
Crazy.
That's insane.
Nah, it was
Yo,
good.
you continue to level up every time, bro.
Yes, man.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate y'all, man. I appreciate you being supportive of the journey and recognizing, that's a huge part of it that, becomes the wind at your back when someone like yourself, is like, yo, brother, good job, man. Keep going. Like, that means the world to me, man. I'll never take that for granted. So thank you.
Huge.
Man, I appreciate you. And of course, and anytime.
Yeah.
You are, you're different. You're a shining example of what designing your path can look like, and why that leads to success. I'd rather fail making great decisions knowing, okay, it just wasn't for me, because in any other scenario, I'm going to win because it's all based on great taste and talent, skill, and gift,
Yes.
you know, and like I said, playing the part, you know, picking the part is just as important as playing it.
Yes.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yes.
And I hope everybody hears this Jim too. Like, you know, low fruit is low fruit for a reason. And a lot of times it's poison. But that one that's up there that's a little bit harder to reach, but at the same time, the sun just hit it different. That's where your hands belong. It's amazing. It's amazing what you've done, man. Amazing. And thank you for coming on with us, bro. And we gonna pay homage to the Bay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you,
know,
brother. Thank you.
We're gonna pay homage to the Bay. The Bay's serious.
Thank you.
The Bay's serious. People don't understand, man. Too Short, really from the 80s, bro. The 80s, like really crushing it from the 80s. And then he come out and blow and then do Blow the Whistle. Yeah. What? Don't play
and
with
you
him.
listen to his music from the 80s and some of it sounds like it could have dropped a couple of months ago. Like it's out of Atlanta or somewhere. Like really, he's the template for so much of the sound that's happening. Like he really is. It's like it's lived throughout. And there was a point where people were making fun of him or whatever. And then whatever, he transcended that. And early on, people were supporting him globally. So yeah, that's the Godfather here.
He actually was one of he was one of the examples of when I knew hip hop was here to stay, because when rich white girls were singing every single one of his lyrics in high school and weren't offended by it, I knew it was over.
Yes. Yeah. Oh man, appreciate y'all.
Yo, thank you, man. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you. I appreciate it, man. I'm humble.
And love to your family, bro.
Love, brother. Love to yours, man. And we got more work to do, Pharrell. So, you know, we'll get up when it's right. But I know we got work to do, brother.
Come on, let's get it. I
get
love making films, and you crush them. Every last one on you in. So let's get it.
All right, brother. Y'all be well.